Hey, what's up, Next Level crew? Welcome back to another episode of What's Your Next, the podcast where we talk about taking bold steps toward building the lifestyle and freedom that you actually want. And today we have a great topic, and that is hot or not, how to pick the right industry for your franchise future.
Welcome to What's Your Next. This is the go-to podcast for aspiring business owners who want to get to the next level, escape the rat race, and give their middle finger to the corporate 9-to-5. If you want financial freedom, work-life balance, and the business of your dreams, you're in the right place. Dave and Stacy Riska, husband-wife franchising duo, openly share their successes, failures, and lessons learned in franchising, business ownership, and working with your spouse.
Of course, here we're talking about industries of franchises, so it's a pretty interesting topic in that there are really industries for just about everything when it comes to franchises, with over 4,000 franchise concepts out there. With that being said, why does choosing the right industry matter so much as far as potential success?
Look, as you said, there's over 4,000 different franchises, and whichever one you decide to move forward with, realize that you're likely signing a franchise agreement that's going to commit you for at least 10 years. Most franchise agreements are 10 years. So you need to be looking at the trends. What's happening in the marketplace? Don't choose something based on because, oh, I like this. It really makes me feel good and passionate. You need to be diving deep and looking at trends because you could have a really good franchise in a bad industry. Think Blockbuster, right? That they were doing great, but then they didn't really change with the technology and they got left behind and now they're gone. Or another one that I talk a lot about is frozen yogurt because everybody wants to own an ice cream shop. And when frozen yogurt became a trend, everybody was just throwing out money to open up a frozen yogurt shop. And now you don't see them anywhere. So you want to be looking 5-10 years down the road. What's happening in the industry, in the economy? What are the trends? You want something that is trending, not trendy.
And we're going to learn more about industries here. So what's the difference between timeless versus an emerging industry?
Yeah, two very different concepts. If something's timeless, it means it's always needed. And there are many concepts and industries that we'll talk a little bit about that check the boxes for those. And if you're looking at something that's more emerging, that means it's new. It might be sexy. It might not yet be proven. So Dave, if we're talking about some of our favorite categories and industries that would check the timeless box, what would you say?
Well, accounting.
Right.
There's always going to be taxes, right?
Exactly.
Senior care. There's always going to be folks that are aging. Pet care. Everybody loves their extra children.
Four-legged children.
There's exercise and health. They're going to be another probably timeless industry. So there's quite a few of them.
Right.
But how can someone tell if an industry is growing or dying?
The information is out there. Listen to the news, look at the trends. You can sign up for updates on Google Trends. You can put something in about franchising or businesses and get daily updates of what's happening in an industry or a category. So there are a lot of reports out there. For example, we are big proponents of following what's happening in the franchise industry. So we look at the IFA, the International Franchise Association, and there's also daily information that comes out with Franchise Wire. They're always publishing information of what's happening in both franchises, the industry, and the trends that are impacting this. So it's just kind of looking at the broad industry as a whole and kind of looking at what's happening in there related to demand, economics, changes, positive or negative.
Absolutely. It's trends, right? And as Stacey said, one of the key ways that I would research an industry that's growing or dying is Google searches, right? Just trends in Google searches. If those have been, going like this over the last 8 to 10 years, that unless something dramatically changes in that industry, it's probably in some type of decline. Just a simple way to kind of wrap your head around, where an industry might be heading. So what's the difference between recession-proof, recession-resistant, or recession-weak?
Right. 3 terms that people kind of spew out to us. Oh, I want a business that's recession-proof, recession-resistant. Well, what the heck does that even mean, right? Well, ultimately, it's answering the question of how well a certain industry can weather a downturn. So when you're talking about an industry or a business that's recession-proof, this means that it's needed, that no matter what, people are always going to open up their wallets and pay for it. So think about things that are always needed. Restoration. If your house gets flooded, you need some restoration or fire, things like that. Plumbing. If you have a leak and water's coming out of your ceiling or on the floor, you're going to open up your wallet. Insurance. These are businesses that are recession-proof. People are going to always pay for them. Now, when you're talking recession-resistant, people are opening up their wallets, but they may pull back a little bit and maybe not spend as much. So think about categories like salons. When you go to get your hair cut, maybe you get your hair cut every 6 weeks, and now you're just going to push it back to every 8 weeks. You may not spend as much on it, but you still have to get a haircut. Or another kind of concept might be a gym, where, every month you see, oh, I'm being charged for this, but maybe I'm not using it as much, so you may stop going to the gym. Or another one might be auto repair. You have to fix the car, but maybe you'll do a little less than you normally would. So that kind of summarizes recession resistant. And then recession weak are more of the like to haves. So these are more like or want-based businesses versus need-based. So these are more of the lifestyle things that we may treat ourselves to, like massages, high-end dining, luxury items. Those are the first that people tend to cut out. So we tend to guide our candidates more towards recession-proof and recession-resistant industries because they tend to do well over time.
Absolutely. So what other filters should someone use to choose an industry?
Well, maybe let's talk about how we went through the process of choosing our coffee smoothie franchise, because we didn't wake up saying that's what we wanted to do, but it checked the boxes for us in many ways. So what filters would you say that we use to choose this industry?
I definitely think flexibility and freedom was a big one. We were looking for something engaging and fun, which was not one of the key, what I would consider key whys to, wanting to pick a particular franchise. And we also knew that people needed to eat and drink, right? So, and it was something in a trend at the time, health, it was coffees and smoothies, and people were looking, well, everybody drinks coffee, right? But, smoothies were healthy and definitely a trend and still are today. So it was some things that we had at the time were our key criteria for choosing the franchises that we had for 19 years. But, as far as, picking an industry at the time, I don't think we spent as much time on that as we probably should have, now that I look back, right?
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20. And I feel like we did it more because it was a lifestyle business. We had young kids growing up at the time, and this was a business that allowed us to work from home. They could be involved in it. I think part of it, as you were saying, Dave, tied into this healthy trend. Smoothies were becoming an up-and-coming thing, and we felt that that was a trend that was going to stick around. But I think for us, one of the big drivers was that it had different business models, right? That you could do a brick and mortar, you could do a food truck, you could do a kiosk, you could do a cart, a trailer, and we like that freedom and flexibility. And also, I feel like this was an emerging brand. And because we had owned a business before, we were a little bit more entrepreneurially minded. And this particular franchise was open to new ideas. Whereas had we gone into something that was very established and dot the I's and cross the T's, we would not have been successful in that type of industry. And so that's why when we're matching candidates to a business, we want to understand what's important to you. So if you tell us, oh, I want a better lifestyle, well, what does that mean? Do you want to work from home? Or do you just want a 9 to 5? Are you open to working on the weekends? You know, how involved are you going to be in the day-to-day? Are you going to hire a manager out of the gate? And what are your scalability plans? Like, are you just going to have one unit, or are you going to be an empire builder and, you know, take on a whole area, county, or state? So lots to think about. And that's why working with us to help you get clarity on that and match you to concepts that are in the right industry and would be a good fit. That's one of the benefits of working with us.
Right. There is definitely a lot to picking an industry, as you can tell from this topic today. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make when choosing an industry?
Well, I always relate it to donuts. Everybody loves donuts. And everybody goes to the donut shop and sees the line out the door. And then they call us and say, Stacy, Dave, we want to own a donut shop. And what do we always say? Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Right? And so what happens is you're choosing a business based on something you saw that excited you because it's trendy, or something that's passion, as Dave was talking about before. People choosing a business because they love children and they want to save the world and they want to help seniors. It doesn't mean that that may not be the right business or industry for you. So where I see people are making a mistake is choosing passion over profits.
Right. And coming back to the donut shop, there's nothing wrong with owning a donut shop.
Right.
If that is the appropriate business for you. One of the things we see a lot of, in coaching and working with candidates, and a common theme that comes up a lot is that, people will tell us, well, if I'm out at a cocktail party, and I tell them I'm going to own a flooring franchise, they, look at me like, cross-eyed, like, that's the most boring thing in the world. On the other hand, what they're thinking is they want that donut shop. They want the 3 donut shops that everybody that drives by goes, that's Joe's donut shop, right? It's an ego thing. And we say, don't do that. That is an emotional decision, and keep an open mind when it comes to not just individual franchises, but industries of franchises, because the one you think you want may not be the one that gets you to your why or your goals. Mm-hmm. What should someone ask themselves before choosing an industry?
Well, we've covered a lot of it today. I think there's 3 questions that you should get clarity on. One is, when you're looking for a business, do you want certainty, or are you looking for the upside, right? And how risk averse are you? So also ask yourself, with the business that I'm choosing, am I solving a real problem in the marketplace? Because if you can solve a problem, people will always open up their wallets to you. And then you also want to look at the trends and ask yourself, is this business going to be relevant 5 to 10 years from now? So as Dave was talking about, Google it, Google the industry, Google the business, and look at the trends that are happening. Are people getting into it? Is it an up and coming industry that's going to continue to grow and flourish? Or is it one that might be on the decline based on things happening? If you get clarity on that, you'll have a lot more success in finding the right business for you and the right industry.
Yeah, that's a lot. We covered a lot today. So as you can see, the topic of industry and business is very, very important. We hope you've enjoyed this content. If you have, do us a favor. Please like and subscribe. Click all the buttons below. It really does help us out with the Google algorithm. We do appreciate you joining us and learning a little bit more about choosing industries for business. And we will catch you on the next episode of What's Your Next?